Once upon a 2008, these guys made sure this guy won a Formula 1 race, making this guy lose a big trophy to this guy, all because this guy smithered his car into this street corner in Singapore on purpose. This is Crashgate, aka the harebrained plot to save an F1 team by convincing a 23-year-old to total his own car. But how could crashing your own car win you a car race? Well, first you have to drive it through some well-placed loopholes in F1 strategy, which I'm elated to explain because my writers never let me talk F1. In fact, we're only doing this video because in exchange for writing it, I offered them 2 extra hours of outside time this week. Anyway, in F1, the goal is to build the fastest car and then get some daddy-issued adrenaline junkie 20-something to drive it in several dozen circles the fastest. There are 3 buckets of F1 rules that would lead you to crash your own car to get ahead. The first regards pit stops. Each driver's 2-ish pit stops slows them down considerably. You measure the time you'll lose with a stat called Delta time, which, for normies, is the amount of time you spend on hold with Delta Airlines when they're, quote, out of planes. But for F1 means the amount of time your pit stop adds to your lap time. If a regular lap takes me a minute and a half, but my pit lap takes 2 minutes, my Delta time is 30 seconds. Usually a pit stop will cost you something like 20 to 25 seconds, which in a sport where races can be decided by milliseconds is a big deal. Our next rule bucket regards the safety car, a charming little fella that hits the track in dangerous conditions. Think torrential downpour or a crash. When it's out, the race cars follow it around the track at a slower speed to keep their tires and engines warm until the scene is safe again. So if the safety car is out for a few laps, thanks to the slow speed, all the cars end up lined up behind it like little ducklings until it leaves, tightening up the race considerably. You generally can't overtake another driver during a safety car, but the laps while it's out do still count in the race. This creates an opportunity. If everyone slowed down anyway, pitting costs less time. It still takes whatever your delta time is to pit, let's say 22 seconds, but if the safety car slows everyone down by 10 seconds per lap, it neutralizes 10 of the 22 seconds pitting costs you, even if you rejoin the pack further back in the standings, making you able to absolutely rip it once the safety car leaves. The third ingredient in the Crashgate soup is F1's point system. The 2 big awards at the end of the season are the Drivers' Championship, which goes to the individual driver with the most points across the season, and the Constructors' Championship, which goes to the team whose 2 cars collectively got the most points. Points are awarded at each Grand Prix based on the driver's placement. In 2008, you only got points in the top 8. You'll notice there's a bigger points difference between 1st place and 2nd, and 7th place and 8th, and that there's no difference between 9th and dead last. All of this brings us to the beginning of our story, September 28th, 2008. It's the debut of the now legendary Singapore Street Circuit and F1's first ever night race. We're most of the way through the season, and this team, Renault, is not doing well. They haven't won a race in 2 years, and rumors are circulating that they'll leave F1 if they can't turn things around. Singapore's qualifying session, which decides everyone's start position at the Grand Prix, had not gone well for Renault. Fernando Alonso, the better of their 2 drivers, had come in 15th of 20. Nelson Piquet Jr., their other driver, was in 16th. Alonso starts the Prix with an unusually small amount of gas in his car, making him lighter and faster, but forcing him to pit before anyone else, which he does during lap 12. When he emerges, he's in 19th. Then 2 laps later, Piquet Jr., after confirming the current lap number a bunch of times over his team radio, lets go of the steering wheel and accelerates into this wall. Debris goes everywhere, bringing a safety car onto the track until it's cleared, which takes a while. In that time, everyone pits, including race leader Felipe Massa, who has a disastrously slow pit stop and drops to 13th place. Well, not everyone pits. Not Fernando Alonso. He pitted right before the crash. So as everyone else takes their pit stop, they rejoin the race behind Alonso, and when the safety car leaves, he's at the front of the pack. The race ends with Alonso on top, Massa in 13th, and Piquet out. At the time, it looked awfully lucky for Alonso. A crash at the exact time and place to move him up 18 spots, ending Renault's 2-year losing streak. But was it too lucky? Yep, big time. The real story of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix begins the summer of that year when Nelson Piquet Jr., son of 3-time world champion driver Nelson Piquet Sr., is antsy. He wants Renault to re-sign him for the 2009 racing season and is worried that he hasn't gotten a contract yet. Come September, no contract has appeared, and he feels his spot on the team slipping away. The day of the Singapore Grand Prix, Flavio Briatore, Renault's team principal, calls Piquet into his office to meet with him and this guy, Pat Simmons, Renault's technical director. They ask him to take one for the team by, as they euphemistically put it, causing a safety car after Alonso pits. He's not promised a contract for it, but agrees anyway to bolster his rep on the team. Simmons whips out a map and tells him to crash at turn 17, the only place on the circuit with no crane to pull his car out quickly and no side entrance to easily move debris out. It would guarantee a long enough safety car that everyone but Alonso would pit. They tell Piquet to be safe, which brings us back here, and you know what happens next. The truth is, without the crash, neither Alonso or Piquet Jr. were likely to score any points in Singapore. Sacrificing Piquet rocketed Alonso to first, gaining both him and Renault 10 big points in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships, respectively, at the low cost of the likely no points Piquet would have won that day anyway. But what happened after? Well, for a while, nothing. Even though people were suspicious of Crashgate, Renault's secret was safe with Briatore, Simmons, Piquet, Piquet's family friend he told, and Piquet's dad, the friend, told. As long as Renault kept Piquet Jr. happy, he'd have no reason to snitch. In the end, Alonso won 5th place in the Drivers' Championship, and Felipe Massa came in 2nd to Lewis Hamilton by 1 point, while Renault finished 7th of 11 in the Constructors' Championship. They'd officially gotten away with it, leaving Crashgate nothing but a conspiracy theory. As long as Renault didn't fire Nelson Piquet Jr. and replace him with Romain Grosjean less than a year later, pissing him off so bad he spilled Crashgate to the press. August 3rd, 2009, Renault fires Nelson Piquet Jr. and hires Romain Grosjean. 2 weeks later, the boys Piquet accuse Renault, Briatore, and Simmons of race fixing. Initially, Renault denies it, then 2 weeks before their hearing are like, actually, yeah. The rest is lawsuits. Piquet got immunity for coming forward, interrogators determined Alonso had no idea of it and let him off too. Briatore and Simmons both left Renault and were banned from F1 for a few years before finding their way back. Renault paid no fines and didn't even serve their 2-year suspension, but took a serious reputational hit. And over 16 years later, the lawsuits continue. Felipe Massa is suing, among others, Formula 1, claiming that the 10 points he lost to Crashgate lost him the Drivers' Championship and is owed over $80 million in damages for that. So that's the sneaky way to win an F1 race by hurling a 23-year-old at a wall. A perfect plan, as long as you don't get caught, or, maim anybody. In many ways, this event solidified Nelson Piquet Jr. as the Mario Kart Red Shell of IRL motorsports. What a legacy. And while Felipe Massa is out there getting his bread with a lawsuit, how about you get this bread from this video sponsor, Wild Grain? Look at it. Look at this bread. I don't have to convince you to like bread, pasta, and pastries. We all love bread, pasta, and pastries. And Wild Grain brings the best breads, of your choice, of course, to your door where you can cook it from freezer to table in 25 minutes. And it puts flop grocery store bread to shame. Wild Grain sourdough is slow fermented to be easier on your stomach, and they've always got new, seasonal, and limited time items for you to try. And none of that is even the best part. The best part is that for every person who joins Wild Grain, they'll donate 4 meals to the Greater Boston Food Bank. So if all that sounds good to you, which it should because it is, click the link in the description, head to wildgrain.com/HAI, and use code HAI to get $30 off your first box and, I mean this, free croissants for life. So what are you still doing here?